guy, Marcus Lynch, he used to do weather and stuff. Now he's selling insurance.
Probably more money with it. Used to do commercials for bath fitter.
Yep. No. That's not him, but does he? I know that's Marcus Lynch is the one that does the insurance commercials.
Yeah. He says he's an insurance agent on those commercials.
Well, I would think he would be, because you can't say you're not an insurance. You can't say insurance agent if you're not. I don't know.
He's licensed in Tennessee and Virginia.
Yeah. Want to go for Kentucky and North Carolina? What do you think?
Welcome everybody. This is the Hawkins County Board of Education, October 22nd at 6 o'clock. This is a special call meeting for interviews of our two finalists for the Director of Schools for Hawkins County. At this time, if you would please, I'd ask you to stand for a moment of silence, and Mr. Jackie Charles is going to lead us in our pledge. Thank you.
Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All members of the board are present for the record. And tonight we will be interviewing Mr. Thomas Sisk and Mr. Matt Hixson, our two finalists from the 6 original finalists that we had originally selected and have interviewed. And after tonight's interview, we hope to be able to ask the questions specifically. Each board member will be given an opportunity to ask 2 questions each and then follow up on their questions to the candidates. There will be a total of 70 minutes maximum for the candidates to respond, to make their opening statements, respond to the questions, and a closing statement if time allows. At the conclusion of tonight's interview, the board will be taking a vote on who we would like to call as our Director of Schools. So with that said, I'll turn to Mr. Qualls to see if he has any other remarks that I may have omitted before we start the interviews.
I think you're good. You did very good.
Okay, all right. We will start our interviews with Mr. Thomas Sisk of Limestone, Alabama. And if someone could ask him to step in, we'll get started. Let me ask the board while Mr. Qualls is getting him. Is there any procedure as far as order in terms of asking questions? We can start with Mr. Hicks on the end and work our way this way, or I can start and work our way that way. Yeah. No matter? Okay. All right. I'll start then, if that's okay with the board. I'll just start right here. Mr. Sisk, come on around. There you go. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Sisk. Thank you for being here again, and welcome to Hawkins County. It's good to see you. Our format tonight, as I just briefly went over with the board, is that each board member will be allowed 2 questions to ask of you. Like we did the last time, we would like to hear an opening statement if you'd like to make one. And then at the conclusion, we'll let you make closing remarks. Mr. Qualls will be our timekeeper again. He'll let you know at the 30-minute mark, and then thereabout, 2-minute warning, I guess, or 10-minute mark, somewhere in that neighborhood for you to kind of wind things up. So 70 minutes max, and that's where we are. Any questions before we get started?
No, sir. Just want to say thank you for the opportunity to come back and to speak. And I think there's a larger crowd this time around.
There he is.
I guess they're all anxious to hear what I have to say, so I'll do my best.
Okay. The 70 minutes, of course, we don't have to stretch it out to 70 minutes. 70 minutes max. We finished earlier. We're still good on that. Okay. I'll just turn the floor over to you and any opening remarks you want to make, and then I'll start the questioning. We'll just work our way around the table.
Okay, absolutely. Well, again, my name's Tom Sisk, and I'm very humbled to be here today to speak to you on behalf of a career of 30-plus years, both as a classroom teacher, building level principal, central office administrator, and seated superintendent. I think what makes me uniquely qualified is the fact that I started out as an elementary teacher, as a special ed teacher, and then moved into secondary. So I've taught children in grades 3 through 12 myself, so I understand the differences of both of those. It's been an exciting week. I was anxious to come back and talk to you more. I'm excited about it. But it was really exciting for us in Limestone because, you know, the state of Alabama picks 4 schools of excellence every year for advancement in AP classes. And 2 out of the 4 were in Limestone County. 1 was out of Birmingham, 1 was out of Mobile. So it's the first time we've ever had a school of excellence, much less 2 of them. So we're really excited.
Congratulations.
My opening remarks is I'll refer the time to you so that I can answer your questions.
Okay, you ready?
Yes, sir.
I'll start then. My first question, Mr. Sisk, is if you are selected for the director of schools, please explain how you would evaluate current employees in your administrative staff, including principals and support staff, and how would you evaluate them for their position? And secondly, how would you, what timeline would you use to try to accomplish this task?
Sure. Evaluations of employees is an important part of the process if we are focused on getting better. Obviously, I'm going to use the state-adopted systems that are in place. I'm becoming more familiar with the ladder process and how that is applied to encouraging teachers. I would also want to look at collaborative models. If we hire someone, we typically will use a committee. So if we're going to evaluate individuals, we're going to get input from various stakeholders. I'm going to be talking to principals if it's a teacher. I'm going to be talking to coworkers if it's a teacher. I'm going to be talking to parents if it's a teacher. I would want people to always understand that it's not I'm out to get you. It's how do I find a way to make you better than what you already are. As a profession, we want to improve and grow teachers. Obviously, classified employees, I developed a model that the state of Alabama currently uses called CEF, which stands for Certified Employee Evaluation Form. That form's been adopted by a number of school systems. I wrote that program while I was on the Education Advisory Board at the University of South Alabama. In terms of teacher systems, I'm familiar with the Tennessee adopted system, but I would have to learn a little bit more. In terms of evaluation, it's going to be a positive growth model to try to improve instruction. It's going to always center around how do we get students to be better at what they're doing in the classroom. Like I said, it's not going to be an out to get you. I'm going to rely on numerous systems observations. The year before last, I did 800 classroom visits for the record. Okay? When I go in, that's not a 15-minute evaluation. Teachers, relax, okay? I want you to be used to seeing me in the room. It might be a 5-minute visit. It might be just a walkthrough. Again, it might be looking for the essential question. It might be looking for where are we at on our pacing guides? Where are we at on our course of study? And is it consistent with what we're supposed to be doing? And then it's an opportunity to build a relationship and be accessible. So I would expect to have opportunities to be able to build it. So as far as teachers are concerned, a collaborative model. Administratively, principals, again, I would be looking at interest surveys. Vanderbilt University came out with a program called ValEd, and ValEd is an evaluation tool that uses multiple data points. It doesn't cost anything, so we can just download it and use it. And that data point would be used along with the state-approved systems, and then those would be merged together. And then if we find that we have an area of growth opportunity, we're going to work on that together to improve as an administrator. If there are areas where we're going to just celebrate, well, we're going to celebrate that too. But the key, I think, is going to be that it's fair, consistent, equitable, and supportive.
Can you speak to the supervisors in your office, your administrative leaders in your office, how you would evaluate their skill set?
Sure. What I'm going to be looking for, obviously, is are we reaching the objectives that have been set forth by this board? Are we consistently meeting that? Are we keeping to timelines? Are we making the reports that we're supposed to be making to the state and the federal government? Are we reaching the predetermined objectives? If we're in an advanced ed evaluation year, we're going to be using a lot of additional tools. Supervisors are going to be individuals that are going to be partly my eyes and ears in the field, because you can't be everywhere. And this is true in any district of size, and this is a good size system. So they're going to have one-on-one time. We're going to set individual goals. We're going to give them opportunities to get to those goals. And we're going to work towards professional development if they can't get there. I believe in what's called prescriptive intervention. Prescriptive intervention is a process that identifies through multiple data points those areas of weakness and allows you to channel just those resources necessary. There's no sense doing a system-wide PD for all of the supervisors if I only have a problem with one or two.
The second part of the question was a timeline. Do you have an idea about how long it takes to get that process started and the evaluations?
Sure. You'll see that I provided for you an 11-page document called my entry plan. Listen, learn, and lead. In there, you'll see part of that information already outlined, but for the benefit of the crowd, I'd like to point out that obviously evaluations will be cyclical in nature. The first 90 days, I've got a lot to learn if I'm here. I've got to learn faces, places, people, priorities, goals, objectives, the vision of this board, the vision of the individual schools, and how do we grow that. So that'll be my primary focus. Within the first 120 days, then you're going to see me probably stepping back and taking more of a critique and observing where are people at. That's part of look, listen, learn, and lead. That's a sensory leadership style. It's current research. It's a new model. One of my colleagues that I studied with at Harvard actually came up with that. And so we use that in a way that's proactive instead of reactive. I think it's important that we respond to problems and not react to problems. And so if we have an administrator that's not cutting the mustard, we're not going to react. We're going to respond. And the difference is thoughtful intervention, prescriptive intervention. So probably in the first 120 days, you'll see something started. Again, I'd have to become familiar with what the Tennessee guidelines are. There may be actually some rules and regulations that guide me and determine that, and I'm not familiar with them yet. I'm familiar with Alabama law extensively, but I'm not yet fully familiar with Tennessee law. That's why I have to look, listen, learn, and then lead.
Second question is, as you know, 3 of the 6 finalists for this position were Hawkins County school employees. Would you find it difficult or awkward to work with the 3 individuals, and how would you go about making this a positive relationship for both parties?
Great question. When I was hired as superintendent of Limestone County, one of the other finalists was the then seated interim superintendent, who was formerly the director of curriculum, Zebra Green. I promoted her to deputy superintendent, and we worked together. She knew the people. She knew where the landmines were. I didn't. I was the first seated superintendent to come to Limestone County in 40 years, and only the second in the history of the school system since, 18-something? So I would work with those 3 closely. First off, I've made the point not to know who they are, okay? Unless they come up and identify themselves, they can walk to me right now and I wouldn't know. And I'm not going to be interested in finding out who they are. What I am going to be interested in are, will they do the job? Do they do it efficiently? How do we get better? How do we continue to improve? What direction do we go forward with? I don't fault anybody for trying to better themselves and to apply for a position. I will certainly hold it against them. I will certainly work with them. It will not be a problem for me.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here, Dr. Sis.
Thank you for having me.
Hawkins County is very proud of our teachers, our administration, certainly every employee that works in our system. They're all fine people and very dedicated and loyal to Hawkins County. Surrounding this county, we have many districts that offer very competitive pay, often better than Hawkins County. Can you describe your plan to not only hire quality teachers for Hawkins County, but also retain them here?
Absolutely. It's a great question, and I'll tell you, the first step, obviously, is self-efficacy. They got to feel good about what they're doing. Albert Bandura talks about that in 1934, and it hasn't changed since. We do that by treating them by the professionals they are. One of the things that I would probably want to do is get away from after-school professional development. I think it's foolish to put an employee, a professional, through professional development after they've already worked a 7.5-hour day, demanding day with children. What I would probably do is work with this board to institute half days of professional development where students are sent home half that day, clearly communicated to the community in advance, so that we can do professional development during the day while they're there. One of the things that I would be looking for is ways to improve morale within the district. And again, those classroom visits that I mentioned earlier are also morale builders. I'm always going to find a reason to say something positive about their classroom, whether how nice and orderly it is, how well they're organized, how good the essential question is going to be. One of the roles of the director of schools, as is a superintendent, is to be the chief cheerleader of the school system. And I have a lot of experience in that. I would also want them to know that we will look for ways to improve their situation. I was surprised to learn that a district our size here does not have a foundation. One of the things that I would work with the board to do is to create a schools foundation. That foundation would then work with local industry and or utility companies. For example, we might be able to get the local utility board to round out your bill, round it up to the next whole dollar. Those monies could then go into a centralized account that could then be sent to the board and be used for incentive pay, could be used for buying classroom supplies and individual grants. Again, improving self-efficacy. Having sponsored trips for them is another way to improve morale. Not a trip to Disney World, sorry teachers, but an educationally relevant trip to the area that we could probably find sponsors to do. I've had some success in pulling that together, and I think that that might be another way that we can improve their efficacy. The third thing I would do is when we would attract new teachers in here, we need to make sure that we can help them secure quality housing and showcase what it is that we do. In Limestone County, we struggle to recruit teachers, not because of the pay, simply because fewer and fewer young people are going into education today. That is a national trend, and it's scary. And so one of the things that we've done to respond to that is we're going to grow our own. We should have a future teacher of Tennessee club in either of our two high schools. Those students should then be brought up and their love of teaching should be encouraged. And with that, we should be able to then grow our own. That was particularly helpful in attracting and extending the number of minority teachers that we had. When I got to Limestone County, out of 625 teachers, we had 18 minorities. We now have 60. It's still a far cry where we need to go. But by growing our own and by doing things and making people feel good about where they are and being respected as the professionals that they are, I think that will help offset some of the pay.
Thank you. My second question is, describe the steps and strategies you would take to build a positive image of the school district. How would you approach our elected officials and the community to correct misleading information?
Got to be visible, got to be present. There's some things as a superintendent or a director that you can delegate. There's some things you cannot. I'm going to be in the back pockets of the commission. They're going to be familiar with me. They're going to know me on a first-name basis. They're going to be involved in activities that I'm going to be involved in. I'm going to be involved in Rotary. I'm going to be involved in Kiwanis. I'm going to be involved in those different organizations so that I'm approachable. We're going to build those relationships because there are no results without them. I think that when we look at the overall climate, we have to rebrand ourselves. You know, I came in and I got a tour of the district, And so I look at our county cars, and some of them have lettered Hawkins County. Some of them have a decal. Some of them have different color letters. We need to be consistent. We are not a confederation of schools. We are a school system with a unified image. That logo right before the chairman should be the logo that's on all of our things. We should be Hawkins proud. And if you look on my social media platform, which I assume many of you have, you'll see me use that phrase, limestone. We are limestone all the time. We are Hawkins if I'm here. We're going to be a unified voice. And that comes from a sense of pride in the way we carry ourselves. And that starts with the very first day of school when we have Back to School Institute and we meet with every one of the 1,100 employees in the district. And we do that by rebranding ourselves, by having a professional image, and not settling for things, second class. We don't have to settle for anything. We need to be promoting ourselves. We may not be the wealthiest county, we may be a rural county, but we can be a very proud, hard-working county. We have a great, awesome logo. We need to get it out there. We got to communicate it. We need to show pride in it, and we rebrand ourselves by doing that. If you look at the logo that's currently in Limestone County, and then look at the one that was there before I got there, it was a stack of books with an apple on top of it. Now the logo, which was designed by a collaborative committee of teachers, parents, community leaders, students, the logo that we adopted in 2013 establishes a history. The center of it is a cotton boll because we were known for growing cotton. It's a strong agricultural community. And so we had something that's symbolic. We don't have to do that. You've already created an awesome image. What we have to do is put that image forward in a positive light. And again, it goes back to being the chief cheerleader. But it's important that the message that I would send as your director would be the message that the people, the teachers are saying when we're out there at the ball fields talking to mom and dad. And so we have to speak with a unified voice. And that calls rebranding and a sense of pride.
Thank you, Dr. Six.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm sorry if I start to talk them.
I understand.
The nastiest. Mr. Hawkins has already submitted one of the questions that I was going to ask, so we'll kind of turn the tables a little bit.
Okay.
But I was out in the community talking with teachers, principals, community leaders, and so these questions are formulated from those conversations.
Okay.
So, could you give us an idea of a development or process that will provide mental and emotional support beginning at the elementary level to address behavior modification, not of disciplinary or an alternative school sort, but short-term, case-by-case situations that would give children opportunities at an early age to learn model behavior and give them the ability to progressively move back into the regular classroom setting?
Well, Ms. Charles, you must have just read the article about social-emotional learning. SEL is the current national trend that addresses every one of those things. It's not something that we have to invent the wheel. We would require some professional development in it, but the center point of a social-emotional learning is we teach the child, not the class. Right now, we teach children in classes and holistically. Sometimes when we do that, we're not meeting children where they are individually. I think that when I hear that you are already making great gains in your early childhood intervention programs, I think that's a step in the right direction. Indeed, in Limestone, we went from 6 to 21 pre-K programs in the last 7 years through grants, an 80-20 split. The social-emotional learning platform, however, takes a whole view of the child. I would be looking for partnerships with mental health, ecumenical services, other social services agencies here in and around Hawkins County to create partnerships to overcome any shortfalls that any of our children might have as a result of their circumstance, where they were born, or the family issues that they may have to deal with. So emotional learning is the platform that I would be promoting. That social-emotional learning platform, I think, will be an umbrella for the total child development. I don't know, do we have breakfast in the classroom here? We have universal breakfast in the classroom in Limestone. We wrote a grant to the USDA. Every child in the school system has breakfast. Do we do that here? If we don't, we should be. The money's there, we don't need to leave it. So that would be a first step.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, this question may be a little bit more, make you a little uncomfortable, but it was given, so I want to give the people the right to voice their opinions.
Sure.
But it's a small concern, it's a concern of us being a small community, of some of the negative press that has been pulled on Google search or wherever they receive those. I know one of them you addressed when you were last about the daughter situation, but there was also a Tanner House principal termination due to the climate, assistant budget woes and outsourcing, and an article written about double dipping, you coming with a retirement, Alabama retirement year to draw director's pay.
Well, you know, interesting thing, when you're a director of schools or a superintendent, you make decisions that aren't going to be popular sometimes, and people have a way of putting that out in social media. That's called a digital tattoo. If you are in a public light and you make decisions, people are going to be upset. If you haven't been the one to make the decision, you're not going to see anything on social media because there's nothing attached to your name, but they didn't make any decision. All right? In the situation with the Tanner principal, I think it's important to know this. I'm the one that recommended him. I'm the one that stood by him as long as I could. But if you make bad decisions and you're a principal, you can be removed. And in that circumstance, there are things that I can't tell this board because it's a personnel matter that he denies venom, but I have evidence. And because I wouldn't speak to that, it paid out heavy in the paper. There were those who tried to paint my image in the eyes of being a racist. Let me say this for the record. My first administrative appointment was Mary Robinson from Federal Program. Great lady. She retired about 5 years later. African-American lady. Didn't hire her because she was an African-American lady. Hired her because she's the best one for the job. Lewis Berry, principal of my largest high school, is probably one of my closest friends, including who was my roommate in college. Not Lewis Berry, but my roommate in college. So the folks that want to paint me in a bad light are going to do it. I can't change that. I will tell you that, you know, after I arrived, we created a cultural diversity task force made up of Hispanics and Latinos. In my previous posting in Baldwin County, we started a program called Dia de la Raza, Day of the Races. Sorry, my Spanish isn't that good. And so, you know, there are those that are always going to paint a negative light. If I were not, if I were a negative or vindictive person, I would not have helped him get a job in a different district where he's now currently serving as a principal in the state of Alabama, another district. He was not the right fit. The reason you're here talking to me today is because you're looking for someone that's the right fit. I'm going to assume that the other candidate is just as qualified as I am. May not be as experienced, but just as qualified. And I'm here to tell you that I'm going to treat people fairly, equitably, and I'm going to reach out with both hands. And sometimes you got to drag them across the line, screaming and kicking. But if there's any question about this, I would say this. I work for a Board of Education who can make a determination that they may not have wanted to support that principal any further. And if that's the case, as superintendent, I have to go and make the appropriate recommendations as well.
Thank you. Like I said, it was an opinion, and wanted you to have the opportunity to address those.
I appreciate that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My first question is regarding bullying, and not student-to-student bullying, but teacher-to-student bullying. How would you, once determined that that was the case, would you hold the principal and teacher less, more, or equally accountable for that, the same as you would a student that was doing the bullying?
Actually, as adults, we should know better. As adults, we're the professional. It's bad enough that we have to deal with children bullying each other. I wish I could tell you I have an absolute answer for that. I don't. But where it comes for adults bullying children, I have neither the patience or the understanding for that, or retaliation against a child whose parent maybe spoke up because somebody wasn't doing something they were supposed to do. Having said that, there are 7 steps to due process. You know, was there a board policy? Was it violated? Was it clearly communicated in advance? Were they given an opportunity for sensitivity training? Did they continue that pattern of behavior afterwards? And if the answer is yes, then it's on that teacher. But where does the principal fall into this? Well, when the principal becomes aware, the principal has an obligation and a duty to protect the child. And in all cases, I expect the principal to act professional. I don't think that that would be a broad problem here, because I believe the majority of these teachers, 99.9% of them, are all going to be hardworking, dedicated, committed professionals. But in that 1/10%, we're going to deal with it concisely and directly and immediately. It will not be tolerated.
Thank you.
And I'm going to turn this off. I thought I I apologize. I hit the wrong button. You know, technology is a great thing when it works. I'm smart enough to know that my grandchildren have to know better than I do. So, let me get this one. Yes, ma'am, your next question.
My next question is, if one of your support staff let an assigned job by his or her direct supervisor fall through the cracks for several months without getting that job done, when that directly affected another school employee, how would you handle that problem with the supervisor and his or her staff?
Well, first off, we have to identify what was done that was not done correctly. We're going to give training opportunities. As I indicated in the previous visit with you guys, my former HR director, who missed a step that caused all the political turmoil because of my daughter, is former. I do believe in holding people accountable, but not before giving them an opportunity to get better. It is never my first course of action, but I do expect people to be professional in all situations. And so when there's a breakdown, we're going to identify where that breakdown occurred. We're going to identify the proper training to correct it. We're going to give people an opportunity to correct it. And then if they don't, then they choose to leave. You know, when I came into Limestone County, 5 of the 6 high schools were failing. Okay? Just so you know. We're a B+ district by Alabama standards, no failing schools, and we just had 2 named exemplary. We also had a 45% turnover rate in teachers. Now, having said that, in a 7-year period, you would typically have 40% turnover, just for the record. So there was about a 5% difference because we gave them an opportunity to get better, and some chose to take retirement, some chose to go in other districts. But going back to your question, we're going to look at processes and procedures already here. If there aren't any that are specific to that situation, you can expect me to research it and bring to you options. One of my jobs as a researcher and a deep thinker is to bring you options. Your job is to tell me which one you want, and then I'm going to pursue it.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome, Dr. Sis.
Thank you.
Under the 90-day plan that you had first submitted to the board, one of your interests was wanting to capture community buy-in and support.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you go into detail to explain
Absolutely.
how you would implement?
Absolutely. I understand that one of the largest sporting events in Hawkins County is the Battle of Hawkins County, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Right? Between the 2 high schools. So why can't we have community pep rallies? One of the things that we do in Limestone that I'm hoping that I can bring here is a celebration of American education. And so we find a large facility in and around the county, and we host an American Education Week celebration where all of our schools are on display. And each school has an act. They can bring in students and they can perform. Parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles will come into that, and we will build that sense of pride that's necessary for buy-in. At that point, we showcase the things that we're doing very well. We're going to talk about our career technical programs, which, by the way, you're awesome. You're at 95% of becoming an ACT-approved community, workforce community. I have ideas to get you over 100%. But in terms of getting build-in, buy-in, and support, town hall meetings, going to PTA functions, being accessible, being involved in community activities, all of those are going to be necessary, especially when you're the new guy in town. People want to get to meet you and talk to you one-on-one, and they want to hear. The rule of thumb is, though, I'm going to tell them what I believe to be the truth, and they're going to hear the same thing from me. I indicated in the last meeting, we have community advisory councils. I would have a community advisory council that meets with me, a teacher advisory council that meets with me, a support employee advisory council, and a student senate made up of student leaders picked by the 2 high schools and the middle schools. And so with their input, we're going to get buy-in. Every initiative that I took on where I'm currently at was done with the support of the community. Without it, we can achieve nothing. Results come from relationships.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And my second question, if you could briefly describe your vision for Hawkins County Schools.
A 21st century workforce that creates a need for industry. People are going to want to move industry here because we have the top workforce. I've attended and spoken at national conferences on workforce development. I will tell you this, having sat across the table from the Japanese, we just landed Toyota and Mazda. They called it the new currency. Most communities have rail lines, have interstate, have rivers, have places, flat land to build plants. But the workforce is the difference. And so by focusing on our workforce development, I believe that we will be able to become positioning ourselves to attract industry and more business into the area, which in turn has the benefit of increasing our tax base, which then benefits the schools. So we get something out of that. I think that we can spend a good bit of time working through various projects and programs like the Community Foundation. I think we can do some other projects along the way. But the good news is I don't have to come up with all the ideas. What I have to do is serve as a funnel, gather the resources and channel them into one direction, to this board. And again, do what? Give you options so that you can give us direction and leadership. I would rely on this board for a lot of guidance on that.
Thank you, Dr. Season.
Yes, ma'am.
My time.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm glad
Thank
to be
you.
here.
Thank you.
I've got about 18 different questions.
Well, it looks like I got time according to this, right?
Hawkins County Schools have a policy that students are exempt from end of semester exams if they don't miss any classes or are tardy.
Okay.
What would be your feelings as director of schools on that matter?
I'm going to tell you, I had that policy, and I took the position that we are doing students who are in advanced placement classes or college-bound students a disservice because they don't know how to handle high-pressure situations and go and set for that final exam, which is the equivalent, really, in most cases, as a college-level exam. And the byproduct of that is when they go to college, they don't know how to study, and they don't do as well. So I looked at current research and moved away from that policy. 3 years later, we're back to it because the impact was students started laying out, missing, and becoming tardy. There was no incentive. So we have to have an incentive that's in place to reward them for that. I'm trying to find other incentives that will equally work for that, but I'm here telling you that we moved away from that. We even tried to meet them halfway. We said, well, you know, you could with 3 tardies and 1 absence. But what we found out was our absentee rate went up by like 2% system-wide. And when you have 10,715 kids, that's a lot. And with that done, with an Alabama funding, you have something called average daily membership, which is what you can earn. Average daily attendance is what you get. So you might have 100 kids, but if only 97 show up on any given day, you get paid for 97. So it costs us money. And so I would have to say at this point, having learned from that experience, that I would look at other ways to incentivize the students.
Okay. Do you feel as the director Interpretation of policy and state law rests directly with you on all issues. As this system has many policies that state at administration's discretion, please discuss your opinion for or against.
Okay. Well, first off, I don't make policy. You do. My job is going to be to enforce policy that you write and that you agree and vote on. One of the things that I did while I was in Limestone, we went from what I call the brick. It was literally a board manual that was, I think, somewhere around 6 inches wide. No kidding. We went through the Alabama School Board Association and we went through something called Policy Pipeline. Now we have a 1 inch. And what we've done is we've created a bunch of procedural supports for those policies. I believe that a policy is not something that you can know everything for. It's something that you can go back and look at and you can find the answer to. My job will be to work with the board. Is it solely the responsibility of the director of schools? Well, you know, somewhere the buck's got to stop. I get that. And I've accepted responsibility for things that were not of my making, hence some of the digital tattoo. And, you know, the bottom line is we are in it together. If I'm your director, this is a collaborative effort. You know, one of the questions you asked me before is how do we work through differences of opinion on the board? You asked that question the last time I was here. This is a great lead-in because we have to collaborate. We have to co-construct. We have to work together. And if that means that we as a group go on a retreat, we do that. If this means that we as a group have to do some team building exercises, we'll do that. If that means we need to do some synergenic studies where we find out how we lead, each of us have different leadership styles and some complement each other. And what you may interpret as a disagreement may actually, in fact, be just a conflict of different leadership styles. And then once you realize, well, I know why Paul talks that way, okay. Once we understand each other, then we have common ground. So, no, sir, I know that ultimately the buck stops with me if I am your director, but I believe that it ultimately, you answer to the people as an elected body, so we're in it together.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You looked at me like it's my turn.
Okay.
All right. But I welcome you also.
Thank you.
The two questions that I have, as a matter of fact, all the questions that I have don't come from me.
Okay.
They come from constituents in my district who I kind of asked to give me some ideas of what they would like to ask you here tonight. The first one, and I will be the first to say I'm not as up to date on some of this information as some of my constituents are, so just let me read the question as it was posed to me. It says, state funding favors large consolidated schools and penalizes small schools. That could be systems, I guess, to some degree. If the small schools are performing well but underfunded, would you fight to keep them open, and how would you do that? That's the first part of the question. And the second part is, under what circumstances would you recommend closing a school?
Well, first off, I'm surprised that you haven't already looked on social media and found out that I did close a school. You don't go social media?
I just had my 67th birthday.
Okay. All right. I've actually had to consolidate schools. We closed West Limestone Elementary and Owens Elementary and combined it together and created a new school called Sugar Creek Elementary. Economy of resources says that if you centralize your students, you get more bang for the buck. One of the things I asked for in preparation for tonight was I asked for a copy of your budget, all 133 pages of it. And I have spent hours upon hours looking at it, and I have drafted 117 questions to date. One of the things I'm going to point out to you is I'm a detail man, okay? If you ask me what will I do to keep it open or to close it, I won't, and I won't. We will make a decision based upon the data. If the data suggests that our return on investment is such that it doesn't warrant keeping them open, then that's what the data shows. And then this group will make a decision and say, superintendent, we need to develop a plan. We're going to keep it open, so how do we support and sustain it? Or we need to close it. Where are we going to move the students? How will that impact transportation? What will that look like? When we built Sugar Creek Elementary, that's because I had 4 board members who said that's what needed to happen. Then eventually I had 5. Then eventually I had 6 out of the 7, and that was the direction we went. I didn't ask to do it. We looked at the data, and that's what the data said was what was in the best interest of the district. When you have a school less than 200 kids, it costs you money. You're spending over $9,700 per year per child based upon the current budget that I've looked at. But that isn't accurate when you look at if you're in a school of less than 100, you're actually then spending about $13,000 per child on average. And so you have to make that determination. If it's a safety matter, because I'm telling you, I've went up some of these hills that a billy goat has to use a daggone rope with knots on to get up there. It may not be practical to move those children from that ridge to another ridge because of health and safety, in which case it's worth spending the money. So what would I do, to fight to keep it open or fight to close it? One thing I want to tell you is we're going to change the language. I will never fight with this board on anything. We will co-construct a lot of things together if I'm here. I will simply present what I believe to be the best information and then try to build consensus. And with that consensus, we will then get our marching orders, and then I will meet with staff and we'll develop a plan that responds to, not reacts, responds to the vision of this board. That is my goal as your director. Remember that funnel analogy? You bring me the data, we synthesize it, we give you a single unified product that you can then study and discern. And then once you've done that, you'll be able to give us the information that we need to move forward as a visionary plan. But just know this, building schools is expensive. I read in the newspaper that we talked about building an elementary school for $5 million. I don't know about that. And I know it's a dated article. I can tell you the last one I built was $23 million. There's a high school that's $65 million, 8 miles from my house. There's 2 more under construction that are over $50 million apiece. I'm just telling you, when there was a financial cost to that. One of the things I noticed in our budget was, I think our debt service is less than $1.7 million, which is a great percentage to be in on a budget of $68 million. But I was concerned that we actually went over $3 million into reserves this year. And so before I would make any recommendation to spend money to consolidate or enlarge schools or move schools, I'd like to know if that's a constant in our budgetary future. Because if it is, that's not sustainable. So I am a little bit of a numbers guy, and I do spend time in the budget, a lot of time in the budget. That's my area of expertise.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The second question, and this is a very simple one. It's got some wording, but it's simple.
I love simple ones.
As director of schools, will you ensure transparent communications between the central office, school board, and the public? Would you support informal information requests from the public rather than requiring formal information requests for basic information? And this person gave examples like current enrollment, scheduled repairs, and current projects.
Well, one of the things I noticed in the budget under the superintendent's category, I think it was like item 18 or 19, you have communication budget allocation of $180,000. I can do a lot of communicating for $180,000 in that budget line item. I think that we're going to be very transparent. One of the things you're going to find is that we're going to publish a quarterly type newsletter that we send home. And it's, where are we at? Where are we going? What's our future? I think that kind of a newsletter going out that's systemic, that talks about the whole vision of the district, it unites to the goals of this board and of this system as we move forward to have more reward schools. We're going to showcase the good things that our teachers are doing. We're going to showcase the great accomplishments in our building. And so, yes, transparency. One of the reasons why I took it on the chin and agreed to the consequence I had where my daughter was concerned was because of transparency. I am not above the law or above the rule. And if I'm willing to suffer consequence, I'm going to impose them on others. And I cannot impose them on others if I'm not willing to accept them myself. And so I hope I answered your question. All right.
Thank you.
I got a nod. Not be good. We still have time if you want to give me a couple more questions.
You are under the time limit, but certainly these are good questions that have been posed.
Yes, sir.
And it's some of the questions we weren't able to ask at the first meeting, so I'm glad and I'm very thankful for our board members coming up. Very insightful questions.
Yes, sir.
And helped me as other things that I have thought of, so thank you, board. But with that being said, we'll allow the floor to you to make any closing remarks, and then we'll conclude the interview.
Okay, great. Well, the closing comments I want to make with the board is this. You know, in over 30 years of education, I have taught children, I have coached children. I'm probably one of the few people that you'll meet with that can honestly say I've coached 4 guys that are in the NFL, okay? 2 are all pro. And we were able to bring them back to the school where they graduated, Foley High School, and put in a new field house and add all kinds of amenities because they were successful. You're looking at the only superintendent in the history in the state of Alabama that's went to the Philippines and brought back foreign trained national teachers in the areas of math and science because we couldn't find qualified applicants in those areas. So outside the box is where I'm most comfortable, but only in so much as to do this. Find you options and give you opportunity for solutions. Everybody can bring me a problem, and I can find a few of my own. But my job will be to find solutions and give you options and choices. Your job will be to give me the guidance and the wisdom and the input. I would hope that people in the community would continue to talk to the board, but also that they would open up to me, that they would find out that I'm not vindictive, that I don't hold a grudge, that I'm not retaliatory, that I believe I want to be told, I want to hear. Somebody mentioned earlier about the thing about double dipping, that came up. You know, I'm looking, my wife and I, as we drove over, were thinking, oh my gosh, we're not far away from Gatlinburg, and every year we go to the Inn at Christmas Place. That's where my son-in-law, proposed to my daughter, and you know that's where we're going to bring our. I mean, we've been coming to this area forever. 41 years in the Boy Scouts. You know, there's a council camp right here. Well, those are the activities I'm looking forward to, if given the opportunity, is to come here and have balance in my life. You know, I'm going to work hard. You'll never see me work a 40-hour work week. My wife will tell you that. I was answering texts literally right as I came up. That's why I forgot to turn my phone on. And so I'm accessible. I'm going to work hard if given this opportunity. I'm going to put the children of Hawkins County first. But I'm going to say this for every teacher that's in this room: don't get nervous. Don't get excited, don't get worried. I'm not in here to change the school colors or the mascot. For every administrator that's here, don't get all excited, don't get uptight. We're going to handle this together because we are going to work as a team if I'm here. My strength and the reason I've been successful is not because of anything that Tom Sisk's done. I want you to think about that. My success stories are those of others that I've empowered to be successful. And that's what I excel in. Now, I'm a detail guy. I want the details. I'm going to get to the nitnoids, and we're going to figure it out. But in that scope, we're going to focus on the whole broad picture. And sometimes you can't see the forest for the tree. And I'm counting the pine needles, and sometimes I'm going to be pointing at board members if I'm here and say, hey, you know, what do I need to be doing differently? Give me your wisdom and your advice, because I'm going to count on that. I'm going to count on working a relationship with the Teachers Association here. I'm going to be working with all the stakeholders of this community. But more importantly, I'm going to be committed to the families for these children, because they are our future. And I know you've heard that, and it's not just a buzz phrase. We've got to make a difference. And so if I could leave you with one thought: teachers teach children, not classes. And we're going to meet the child where they're at with the resources you allocate, and I'm going to find ways to get you more resources. In fact, You know, I already have Dr. Causey coming from Robinson County wanting to study what we're doing in Limestone County because of our virtual school. What if I could show you a way where we could actually improve our financial lot as a district? Maybe even bring a couple $1 million into the district. Would you be interested? I've done it, and I think I know how to do it here. So I hope I have the opportunity to talk to you again. I am most grateful to everybody for this opportunity and humbled by this. I know that you have to get the best fit who you think you can work with. I'm going to be selfish. I hope it's me. But if it's not, I want you to know this. I only wish what's best for Hawkins County. This is a beautiful community. We stayed a couple days after the last visit just to check it out. And what we saw, we loved. And we would be very excited, well, ecstatic, to be able to call this home. So I thank you again for your time and your patience and your diligence. And I commend you for this quality process that I know that Wayne Qualls helped put together, but you had to go along with it, and I appreciate that you did that. This has been a quality process to be a part of, and I'm truly honored. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, it's 6:55. Let us take about a 10-minute break if we can, please, and we'll reconvene. Thank you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Been at it for a while.
Got your email today. We'll send you some pictures.
Okay.
Custodian.
Great.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Everybody got this. I'm good.
I didn't know it was raining. It's all right. You're just being for real. Nothing wrong with that. Nobody knows who was talking just now, so you're all right.
Anyway, we'll find out.
Yeah. Yeah, let's get this show.
My brother's trying to move here from Minnesota.
Is he race here?
He hasn't been here since 1975. He got out of the Army in 1975 and moved to Minnesota.
Yeah, you can have Minnesota.
Every time I've been there, it's snow up
I had 26 Chicago winters, and that Minnesota's worse. And so if it's worse than Chicago, it's bad. I'm telling you.
I was in Chicago with Thanksgiving.
charter needs some competition.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my broadband with charter because there's no other choice.
Yeah.
Basically, so.
You can make your phone into a hotspot, and get unlimited data.
Oh yeah.
But it's not as good.
Right.
All right, guys, come on now. It's been more than 10 minutes.
I guess it's trying to make sure the guy got out of here before the next guy comes in.
Well, they got a $180,000 communications budget, so maybe they need a communications director. I think that'd be a hard sell for the county commission, though.
Yes, I know it would. What's going to be $180,000? This is just like the skit, Saturday Night Live skit, or I guess it was Al Franken playing Pat Robertson. You call it a TV evangelist. I guess it was '88 when Reagan was retiring. And they had all those Republicans running.
Did Pat Robertson run?
Huh?
Did Pat Robertson run for president?
Yeah, he ran.
That's what I thought. I was in college, but I was kind of more focused on working and paying my bills.
Yeah.
I was paying my own way through school. It was hard.
In 1988, I was working as a sports correspondent inside the office at the Kingsport Times on this administration.
Oh, wow. All right. Let's go, guys. I'm on deadline tonight, and they're lollygagging.
I'm glad I
Please, I'll call us back into session. We'll wait for our next candidate, Hixson.
Got him in a noise-proof room.
No.
Depending on how windy you are. But nonetheless, we want you to just relax and feel comfortable. And our process tonight will be that each board member has a couple questions that we will pose to you. They're not written, unfortunately, for you to review, but we'll try to give you enough time to answer those. And we'll just do it like we did. I started it off, and we just went around the table that particular order. And if you don't understand the question, please ask us, and we'll try to define the question a little bit clearer to you. Sure.
Coming in from the outside. I know that trust and communication and relationships are critical for this position and for the board to move forward and to grow this district into the district that it is heading to be and that it can become and that it needs to continue and that growth that needs to continue. So I think those are the strengths that I would bring to this table. Obviously relationships first and foremost with you all, and making sure that I'm clear on what your community needs, what your members need, and what your stakeholders need, and steering the district in a way that meets hopefully for the very, very long future. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hixson. We'll just go ahead and start with the questions, and I'll jump in with my first one. If you were selected for the director of schools, please explain how you would evaluate employees in your administrative staff, including principals, to determine if they are the best fit for the position. Second part of this question would be, what would be your timeline to accomplish this goal?
Great question.
you address administrative staff, your supervisors? How would you go about evaluating and assessing their skills and trying to get the best fit?
Absolutely. So my staff at the district office is there to support the school sites, to make sure they're doing what they need to do, as well as preparing and planning all of the necessary professional development.
Regarding policy. Every district has its own policy. Many of them are similar, somewhat, some are different. For every policy, though, it looks like you need a procedure to go by. And if we had shortcomings, and I think we do have shortcomings, and the staff is currently working on that while we're short-staffed at this time, but how would you see yourself participating in that process to build the procedures part of the policy to make this thing work smoother?
I'm a backwards mapping sort of person.
To not only hire quality teachers for our system, but also retain them, as our district is surrounded by other counties that offer very competitive and sometimes better pay than we can within our budgetary means.
Ms. Shedden, that's a very good question. We struggle with the same thing in the district in which I serve now, and I'm perspective is celebrate the good work that they do each and every day. We don't do a good enough job of that, so under my leadership, I would hope that we could increase that. I think if you create a strong family feel, which I know each town that I've been in over my 2 weeks of off and on visiting, I have felt that. I think that we need to do a better job possibly in the school system of creating that same feel and that same collegiality and that same I got your back in times of struggle type of scenario, and that helps tremendously. And then I also think coupling that with rewarding and self-gratifying and awesome opportunity for kids, this is probably the district for you. This is the location for you. So I would approach hiring the same way here as well as the retention. We want to keep those that are committed to the communities in which we serve, not just those that are looking for a job and looking for a step up. And that's why it's very critical that you're holding this process for your director. I would not want you to go into this process and hire somebody that, like myself, if I were a stepper, to come in and 2 years later you're in this process. Things we're doing here in Hawkins County, that's number one. Number two, I need to allow staff the opportunity to publish the things that we are doing each and every day that support those goals. Because without the data showing that we're putting the fiscal resources and the efforts where we have said we need them and where we need to go, there's no proof to the pudding. There's no proof that we're heading in those directions that we stated we would go or we need to go. So I think that it's twofold, building those relationships and communicating the good things that we're doing. There are going to be pitfalls. There are going to be things that we're struggling in. I know that math at the secondary has been a struggle. I think math nationwide has been a struggle. It's no secret that math under whether, I know Tennessee doesn't, but under Common Core or the more rigorous standards that we're following, and I know Tennessee created their own, it's rigorous compared to what we did years ago. And I think that
from communication, so these are coming from outside in, right?
okay.
But one of the questions that was asked of me is to ask you, coming from Southern California, what would be your avenues would you set to pursue to adapt the unique culture of the Appalachian area?
Adapt myself?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm a people person. My wife laughs when I say that because I've always said, very hardworking folks, very, very concerned with education and safety, very concerned with their child's futures, and very, very helpful. But they don't get asked. They don't get asked enough to help. They aren't told where they can help. They aren't told what they can do to support the schools and how they can plug in and get acclimated and really be involved in those educational goals. And I think that coming in, I'm going to have a steep learning curve on getting to know the culture. There is no secret to that. But I think
Regular classroom setting.
very good question. We are seeing this. I think this is a nationwide trend as well. We are seeing this hot and heavy in Southern California right now. And what I would like to do that has seemingly worked pretty well in my current setting is look at a lot of school systems look at what they can do on the special education side of the spectrum of things. We took a different look and we left our special education staff alone, and we looked at what we could do on the general education side as a proactive measure. We looked at bringing in marriage and family. Financial resources and other things limited, we may have to be in a position where we call in the community and say, look, are there interns Are there people that are studying to become these types of positions that can come into the school system and be approved volunteers and earn hours as they go through and provide some of those helps, a lot working alongside our certificated and classified staff. Those types of things we need to be open to and exploring that may not cost us a whole lot of money. It may even be free. But guess what? Now, if this is a pretty egregious first-time offense, and it looks like it is a first-time offense for this teacher for the adult-to-adult bullying, it would be very, very difficult for me if the principal did not know about that for whatever reason to hold him or her directly accountable in that first-time, first-glance instance. However, my expectation of principals be dealt with heavy-handedly, the right way, and it needs to be stopped. We're looking at corrected behavior, not first and foremost, you need to correct the behavior at the end of the day. That you have to hold people accountable for their actions. Safety and education, going back to what I said, and thank you for correcting me. A teacher going after a student is the worst form of public perception that a public school system could face. Period. That whether that's bullying that results in physical harm, verbal harm. We need to fix that right away. If the principal was aware of that, they would be responsible for those actions as well. And my expectation is that they know what's going on in and out of those classrooms.
Thank you. My second question is, if one of your support staff supervisors assign his or her staff a job to do, and that job did not get done. It fell through the cracks, and this went on for a period of months. And it still didn't get done, and it directly affected another school employee. How would you handle that problem with the supervisor and his or her staff?
First thing I do when those types of situations come up is I sit the employee down and I ask, some questions. What were you asked to do? When were you asked to have it completed by? Who were you asked to communicate that to, and how? And if they can't answer those questions, then we may be dealing with a communication issue that could be traced back upstream. If not, and they did have clear expectations and they just failed to meet those expectations, then that's a different conversation. That is a conversation where I then say, this happened because you did not get this done by the set date, using the agreed upon communication method, and therefore we find ourselves in this predicament. So number one, we're going to correct the action and get this under control. And then number two, I want you to reflect, write some things down on what you think went wrong, and bring them back to me. And that could be 24 hours later. It could
that the work had shaped your thinking, your district thinking, into the expansion of your CTE initiative.
Yes, thank you. Vision 2020 for our current district is a combination of our strategic planning, which we would revise each year. We would do a strategic vision for maybe 5 years in the past, and we wouldn't really readdress that every year. So when I sat down with the superintendent a couple of years ago, the state had just rolled out the local control funding formula. Survey and getting information back from them on what we're doing well and what they would like to see in each of those areas. Then we compile that information, we bring it back, and then the cabinet team sits and we look at what we can do and what we can actually afford. And that's the discussion where it gets pretty thin, but we see what we can prioritize coming out of those stakeholder input meetings and what needs to maybe tabled for the next year or possibly several years from now. That whole process has been completely eye-opening. schools, how can we better gain the input from our communities? And you all seven represent drastically different communities spread across this amazing county. There are needs that are represented in one area that may not be the priority in another, although they probably make the list. There's a wide range in between. So we need to look at what I've learned from that is how do we look at gaining that support, gaining that input, what tools or mechanisms do we have in place, and making sure that we're doing that, making sure that we're getting that input where and when necessary.
And could you briefly describe your vision for Hawkins County Schools?
So help make those informed decisions for children's futures, not single-handedly pushing them to a four-year university and then watching them flounder because they may not have the financial support or the family support or the support structures in place, and then drop out and come back and not have the skills necessary to be gainfully employed or give back to the community. That falls on us. It doesn't fall on necessarily the kids first and foremost. It doesn't fall on the families first and foremost. They're entrusting the public education system to provide them those skills no matter what their choice is after high school to move on. I think that that CTE piece is exceedingly important for me as I look at Hawkins. The state is growing. Tennessee is growing. You're starting to see the bigger cities spread out. You're starting to see industry spread out. You're starting to see big warehouses and factory locations looking for open land. It's the same thing in California, by the way. We have a lot of open land where we're at, and industry is moving out. Logistics is a big thing in Southern California. I think that when we look at this area, and we look at the county, and we look at the available land and the available resources that this amazing county has to offer, we need to really sit down and look at what industries are really looking and possibly coming in, and how can we provide a workforce, technical expertise, management, all kinds of resources with our current students in preparing them for those possible roles. My outlook for Hawkins would be that we go back to Ms. Shedden's question. We prepare our students and we give them that desire to come back to Hawkins and work in our schools. We give them the tools necessary to come back and work in our communities. We give them the necessary skills and knowledge to come back and support industry that may be coming in years. But they go to college, they come back, and guess what? They know how to fix a plumbing leak at their house. They have hands-on skills. They know how to weld. They know how to fabricate. They know how to fit equipment on their farm or their family residence. Those are important skills that I think we lose sight of a lot of times.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Tennessee.
Thank you.
When it comes to academics, do you feel that before before a student can pass the class, the student
our in-person classroom setting, and you are teaching, I need to be there to gain that instruction. I need to be there to show you that I know the content. I need to be there to show you that I've demonstrated the knowledge or the content that you're relaying as a teacher. I do think that needlessly having students stay in a course or stay in class after they've demonstrated mastery or after they've demonstrated that they know that subject is one of those things that education fails in. I think that we need to do a better job of differentiating and allowing for those challenge opportunities for our GATE and challenge kids just as much as we differentiate for our remedial students. And I think that if we look at, nope, I'm not passing you, I'm not giving you credits because you weren't here, even though the student has demonstrated mastery, I think we're doing a disservice. There needs to be a middle ground where we say, look, I know Johnny's done it. I know Johnny's gotten the content. I know Johnny knows the subject matter and he has applied what he's learned and he's demonstrated mastery. Let's get him plugged in and challenged in another area and keep him moving and keep him engaged, rather than not passing him or giving him a failing grade, if that answers the question.
close enough.
Okay, all right.
There's been a lot of good questions. A lot.
No questions.
I feel inferior.
They are tough, by the way. Anybody that wants to trade seats right about now would be good.
No, thank you. No, thank you. My other question is, in the state of Tennessee, we have what's called a small schools fund. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not.
Not wholeheartedly yet.
Okay. That fund was set aside by the state of Tennessee over pending litigation. This system gets $300,000 to $500,000 a year, and that money is to be spent for recruiting and retaining hard to get positions filled. Currently, our system uses that to fund teacher and technology leaders in each school. If you were the director, how do you feel we could best utilize those funds?
We have similar funds. We have similar funds in Southern California, and we currently use them as a mixture of those two things that you described. We do have teacher leaders. We do train them and provide them stipends for working with other teachers and conveying that knowledge that they're gaining through technology most of the time. Using and applying technology in the classroom, because as I stated in the first interview, we do not want to hand out technology, whether they be tablets, Chromebooks, iPads, whatever the technology is, and simply have it sit on a desk as a paperweight. So I do feel that there is an importance to spend money on making sure that we're using that technology appropriately, and I think teachers learn best from teachers. With that being said, I also think that we need to do some creative things to help retention. I've heard that loud and clear. I've also seen that in the numbers on specifically the secondary staff that leave to go to same positions in other districts that pay more possibly. So I think that one of the things that I currently do is I offer through our district, through our board approval, incentives for hard to fill and hard to retain teacher positions. Our secondary math, our secondary special education, our secondary English, secondary science, any of those areas, they receive a stipend or an added amount for attending training, but also for sticking it out. They don't get any of that money until they get a portion of it at the end of their first year. They get a second portion of that total at the end of the second year, and then on into that third year. So we're guaranteeing ourselves in most cases, and there are some that try to bail on that, I'll just be honest with you, but in most cases we guarantee ourselves 3-year teachers, and all along the way we're building that family collegiality that hopefully encourages them to stay when they're offered those positions. I can't stop the other districts from raising their salaries. I can't stop the other districts or surrounding areas from raising health and welfare benefits that attract teachers. But I can make them really feel supported, really valued, and really at the end of the day feel that they're part of a family and part of a team that they're going to hate leading. So I think to answer your question, I would like to see if I understand the situation as you presented it, I would suggest that we look at splitting those funds and using some for retention purposes and some for the training purposes.
Thank you.
Last one, huh?
I guess. Last and least. As I stated previously, these questions that I have for you are very simple. And they come from a list of questions that were comprised basically from constituents, and sort of picked out the ones that, not knowing how many we were going to ask. Anyway, these were a couple that jumped out at me, basically because of situations within my district.
Okay.
First of all, the first one is state funding favors large consolidated schools and penalizes small schools. If the small schools are performing well but underfunded, would you fight to keep them open, and how would you do that? That's the first part of the question. The second part is, under what circumstances would you recommend the closing of the school?
Thought they were supposed to get easier as a question.
That is easy.
Okay. On face value, it seems like it'd be a pretty straightforward and easy to deal with topic. However, a lot of our small schools are in the tightest communities. A lot of our small schools are in the communities that look to those schools for not only support during the school day, but many hours before and after school. A lot of those students come to school and they eat best when school's in session. All of those things added up make it exceedingly tough when that funding scenario that you raised at the start of that question occurs. I'll go back to what I said in the first interview. I think that we need to do a better job of a school system in general. Maybe not just Hawkins, but in general. We need to do a better job of looking at why, for example, charters are successful. Why, when a charter or an academy, that's a catchphrase nowadays, right? I'm convinced that if we took our lowest performing schools and we called it an academy, our enrollment would rise. And we wouldn't change a darn thing. However, I think that we need to do a better job of marketing ourselves as far as the school system's concerned on what we could do if we can't afford to keep a building open. Because at the end of the day, I believe a school is made up of students and staff. I believe a church is made up of its members and its pastor. It's not the building that they inhabit. So I think if we look at creative ways to provide educational resources and other resources through a creative source, a hybrid program where students could come in 2 to 3 days a week to learn and work hand in hand with our teachers in remote or lower served areas, and where they're provided the same instruction via streaming services or other online resources throughout the day, that might be an option that we look at. Those hybrid models are significantly cheaper. They're also creative and outside the box. They also allow older students to hold down jobs, to do different things during the day, to obtain their schooling at the end of the school day, for example, or other things. So I think that we need to be creative in looking at those resources and those options prior to making those tough decisions and just flat out closing a facility down. Maybe we look at obtaining a facility that we turn into a learning center rather than having a 35 classroom facility that we have to maintain and keep open that's costing us a lot of money. Maybe we look at building a smaller, cheaper learning center and doing that hybrid model or something along those lines. But it's a very tough decision. And I know from experience, we have a school in our district now that's our oldest school. It's Edward Hyatt Elementary, and it is in declining enrollment. So one of the things that we're doing as a district, and I think this is a very creative solution, and I'm completely open to this, is we created a pilot academy at one of our bigger elementary schools. It's now been in existence for 4 years, and because it's been so successful, we're moving it to the declining enrollment facility. And we're saving a school. But we're taking an award-winning program and we're transplanting it to that location. Now, we're fortunate enough to where that facility is very good and very well maintained, even though it's one of the oldest. But that's thinking outside the box, and that's directly competing with our charters. Last week, in between my first interview and this interview, our city council approved a 1,000-seat academy in our district, and then they turned around the next week and approved a 600-seat capacity academy. That's 1,600 kids of our 10,000 that we stand to lose. Now we can either sit there and take it and moan and complain and whine and gripe about that, or we can say, look, we're going to market ourselves, we're going to tell the community better than we have to this point what we offer and why we can directly compete with the academies here in the public schools. And I think that goes back to your question as well. How are we marketing ourselves? How are we providing what resources we do have in all areas, and how can we improve upon those?
My second question is, as a director of schools, will you ensure transparent communications between the central office, school board, and the public? Would you support informal information requests from the public rather than requiring formal information requests for basic information such as current enrollment, scheduled repairs to buildings, and current projects?
I do support open and honest, transparent communication. And one of the things that I would like to implement, and I'm not real sure if we do this here already, but if selected, I'm a big proponent of a weekly update from our principals, our school sites, our departments, and that's funneled through the director and then right up to the board so that you know what was done during the week, what was accomplished, and what's coming up the next week. That's first and foremost. So I think communication is absolutely critical. As far as information requests, I think the community has rights to information involving their schools. There are confidentiality standards, so not all requests can be treated on that informal level. So each information request would have to come in and be evaluated whether or not we could fully provide that information. But I would guarantee you this, if it is something that they have rights to know, and the public has rights to almost everything we do, minus employee names and employee confidentiality issues, they would be granted those opportunities to know what's going on. And I would hope, and it'd be my goal, to communicate so clearly, and that may take a while, so don't hold me to this immediately, but I would hope that we're communicating and possibly over-communicating to the point where there's not a whole lot of questions coming from the community anyway. This is what's occurring here, this is what's occurring there, this is what's occurring throughout the school system, and at a glance, they could see what's occurring. Most importantly, you know what's going on, there's no surprises as a board. And I think that's hugely a huge responsibility on my shoulders.
Thank you.
Can I ask one thing in line with Mr. Hixson's question?
I have no objection, the board has no objections.
Real quick, along the same lines with openness is to the public, what if a board member requested a monthly expenditure report from the school within their district? And would you require that board member to submit that request in writing?
I think if it comes to the central office and we are able to pull that information together, I would recommend that occurs through the central office and not directly with the school.
But would you still require the board member to request that in writing?
I don't see a reason to request it in writing as long as it's information that I can readily give out, yes.
Yes, and it would.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All minds clear? Doing good. At this point, it'll be an opportunity for you to give us a closing statement, your thoughts and everything, and we're anxious to hear from you.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody's questions, even if they were really, really difficult, Mr. Hicks.
I already knew what the answer was.
I know, that's what made them difficult. My answers needed to be in line with what you do. I really, really want to thank you for the opportunity, even if it stops at this point. I really want to thank you for the opportunity to even entertain a Southern California guy coming over and visiting your town, visiting your community, speaking with you, and being entertained for this critical position. As I said at the end of the first interview, my biggest desire, and I say this wholeheartedly, is that you find the right person, whether that's me or Mr. Sist. I really, really hope that this process nets you who you want, who you need, and who takes you to that next level and provides that leadership for the long term for Hawkins County. Thank you for the staff. The staff has been amazing. Jennifer showed me around prior to the last interview, just informally, got to see the grounds, got to see several schools, got to meet exceptional staff across the board. I would feel at home here. However, I want to be the right person for you. I know that it's the right person, it's the right place for me, it's the right place for my family, but this is about the next leader of Hawkins County Schools. And I really want to make sure that correct decision is made, whether that's me or not. Secondly, I have put a lot of investment of time and energy into becoming the person that I am. I will come with all my faults transparent. I will come with questions. I will come with transparent thinking, I believe. But if selected, I want to be approachable. I want to be approachable by my staff. I want to be approachable to my board. I want to be approachable to the community. And at the end of the day, I think that that's what I bring to the table, a person that's dedicated to building those relationships, building trust, building cooperation on common interests. Like I said earlier, we're not always going to agree. We're not always going to agree, but it's about students first. And if we all have that common goal, we can settle almost any dispute going back to that common interest. And I think that we lose sight of that a lot of times. So it's not rocket science, otherwise I wouldn't be here. I'm the wrong person if it's rocket science. But I am a person that puts people first, and more importantly for this position, students first. So I thank you for your time and for your dedication to this process.
Thank you. That concludes our interview. Is that your mother back there?
I did buy her a pal.
I'll blame him, I'll blame him.
That concludes our interviews. The next process will be that we will allow him to dismiss himself and shake hands if he wants to do that. And then we'll be passing a ballot out for our individual votes. I'll give him that opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Well, he kind of dropped the ball on that school closing. He didn't do his homework. He didn't realize what they were talking about. The other guy did. But that other guy seems like... I think it's a toss-up.
It's hard to say. I really think this guy's good.
I tell you what, they're both good.
Yeah.
What is Mr. Dr. Hixson's name?
Matt.
Matt?
M-A-T-T, like Matt Dillon.
M-A-T-T?
Like Matt Dillon.
Okay. I thought it was, but I wasn't sure.
I think that's what I'm
If you're watching out there in Facebook land, I think what happened during that middle part and the early part of this interview was people started getting home from work and were using their devices and were sucking up the bandwidth. And then as it got later, people put their devices down and started watching TV and stuff, and I got my bandwidth back, so it cleared up. So I'm glad we were able to at least get the second half of the interview pretty good without all the stop and go, which was, if it was frustrating to you, you can imagine it was about 5 times more frustrating to me. But hopefully we're going to be clear without the interruptions for the rest of this process. That was me talking to Facebook land. This isn't part of my job requirement. We don't get an extra nickel for doing it. I just do it because people appreciate it. And I can, I have the power to do it, and I'm sitting here. I might as well just do it while I'm here. And it does help me a little bit because I do videos of events anyways, and this way I don't have to edit it, which I can't edit this anyways. Once it's downloaded and saved, that's it. But it's smaller, and when I film video, it's big, it's huge. It takes up a ton of space, and it takes forever to download. This is smaller. I can download this real fast and upload it to YouTube like that. And I mean, it's bigger, it's longer to watch. You got to watch the whole thing, but you can also skip through and skip ahead and stuff. So. Well, but you can watch it live now. When I hit finish and then share, it'll be on my professional Facebook page, and you can watch it anytime from now until the end of time. Of course, it'll get shuffled down as more things are added. But then you can download the actual video to your screen top or to your desktop, and then upload it to YouTube, which is what I do. And then it's on our YouTube page for the Times News. And then when I post a story online, I take the embed code and I put that in the story. So when you read the story online, the video's there too. So, and one of the advantages of that is more time online. It helps with our advertising revenue, I guess. So there is a benefit to it, but for the paper, but it's not part of my required stuff. No.
We used to do that at
They prefer us to do videos less than a minute or less than 2 minutes, but I'm like, this is going to be 2 hours. But, you you can watch it for 2 minutes, or you can watch it for 2 hours, whatever you want. You can skip ahead. But when they talk about creating videos and editing videos for for newspaper websites, they want them to be like 2 minutes. So you got bam, 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 getting to the point right away. And that's not. I'm not good at that. I like to tell the whole story like a little documentary.
We used to do it quickly. I don't know how long we did a lot of it. I don't think they do it anymore.
Well, it's just when you're writing, you're doing photography and you're doing videography all at the same time. You got to get back to work. You got to download your photos and edit your photos. You got to download your video, edit your video, and write the story. You know, that's a lot of trouble.
If I could please, I'll call us back into session. I think if we learned anything, we have learned that our process has worked. I think we've got two excellent candidates that have surfaced, and I am impressed with both of those individuals. And all 6 of them have been quality men, and I really appreciate the effort that Mr. Qualls has done, and he's done a good job for us. The task that we have in front of us right now is difficult, though, as you can see, and you've heard the interviews. Each one of them has their own skill set and experiences, and it makes it tough on the board to make a decision. But that's where we're at. And we are prepared at this time. We're going to take a vote tonight. I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Qualls. He'll explain a little bit about our process, and we'll announce, if there's the winner's the right word, we'll announce that.
Okay, we're going to pass out a preference form. Each one of you will get one of those. It's not very difficult to figure out what you need to do. Just check the box, you sign your name. Of course, like everything, public record. So we'll let you do that, and then we'll take those up, and Jennifer and I will sit here and we'll tell you what the outcome is, and if somebody receives a majority, then it would be in order. Hopefully the process would work where everybody could support the majority decision, but that's not my call, that's your so.
Mr. Chairman, before we hear any of those results, you know, how are both of them?
Yeah, get a plan, tell me your plan.
How much money?
He's $180,000 communications.
Flip coin.
Oh my goodness.
You know, it's a very tough decision, you're correct, but this board, it's a luxury for this board.
Absolutely.
And for this system and the
That's right.
students in our county. I want to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Qualls personally for his dedication to us in this endeavor. Thank you, Mr. Qualls.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's so noted. I have learned in this process, I just told the chairman that if I do another one of these, it'd be number 41, it'll be by minimum wage. I assure you that. Mr. Chairman, votes have been tabulated, and there is a clear decision. Mr. Hixson has received 6 checks. Mr. Sisk has received 1. So you have a 6-1 vote. So you're perfectly
like to make a motion that this board vote to accept Mr. Matt Hixson as our next superintendent.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Meyer, if you could call the roll, please.
She's right.
Hicks,
Yes.
Christian,
Yes.
Helton,
Yes.
Pratt,
Yes.
Charles,
Yes.
Shedden,
Yes.
Larkins.
Yes. I think the yes is had it, Mr. Hixson. By unanimous vote, and just a second, we'll bring him back. He is here in the Shark Tank, so to speak. He is here, and we will be in touch with both candidates to let them know the results of our vote. One thing that I would like to take care of about this business, of course, we'll have to enter into a negotiation with him on a contract. We'll not be able to do that tonight. Obviously, he is here, but he will be returning back to his job, I think, on Wednesday. That's not enough time for us to do a public announcement to give the sunshine. So what I'd like to do
No.
I don't think so. We'll have to be creative, though. I imagine we'll be using some technology to try to communicate with them, and I'll leave that up to the committee, though. At this time, I would like to, in addition to the committee, I would like to have our finance director, Melissa Farmer, on that committee with your all's permission so she can help us with that portion, the benefits piece and everything. Is that acceptable to the board? And I see everybody nodding their heads. So, Ms. Farmer, would you accept working with this committee?
Yes.
Please, okay. What I'd like to do, I would like to ask about 3 of you, if 3 of you is sufficient to serve on this committee. We represent all different districts, and Mr. Christian, are you available to serve on such committee and willing to take the time? Okay. Ms. Helton, would you be?
I'd be honored.
Okay. Would you be willing to work with this committee?
I'd be honored as well.
Okay. With your permission, I'll appoint that as our committee to work with our new prospective director of schools. I will leave it up to you on the process, and sooner, I would think, is better. He has shared briefly with us, or Mr. Qualls, and Mr. Qualls has shared with us that he probably has a lot of things to take care of back home with his job and family. But you all may briefly talk tonight if you want to do that, and not make any decisions, of course, but and then get the process started and figure out how to do that. And y'all think of anything else in terms of housekeeping business that we would need to address? Mr. Christian?
I just want to make an announcement, if I can.
Not resigning, are you?
No. I just want to take this opportunity that I will be hosting a meet and greet for our new superintendent in District 2 for a date, time, and place to be announced at a later time. Sort of like a town hall meeting, you know, let the folks come out and see meet our new director in a relaxed atmosphere. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Good job, guys.
We'll bring Mr. and Mrs. Hixson into the room.
You have to come.
There's no way out of this. Mr. Hixson, Ms. Hixson, we have taken the vote, and by unanimous vote, you have been elected as our new director of schools. We're excited about that prospect, and I think everybody's been thoroughly impressed with you and your family, so we look forward to working with you. The next part of our piece is trying to get together with you and trying to work on a contract, and we'll try to do that in the days to come. We have a committee appointed. They'll select a chair, whoever's going to chair that committee, made up of Mr. Christian, Ms. Helton, Ms. Shedden, and our finance director in the back there, just then, Ms. Farmer. So we'll be working with those four. They'll be reporting back to us. Sooner is better for us. I don't know about your schedule and timeline, but we'll work with you, whatever it takes. As long as you talk to Dr. Bailey about staying. She's ready, I do believe. She's done a tremendous job, and I think staff has kicked in and filled in for her vacancy as well. I know that you all have done a lot. So with that said, I'll give you a chance. If you want to make a statement to this is mostly staff and some community, but if you want to make a statement, then you're welcome to.
Sure. Humbled beyond all measure. Thank you for welcoming my wife and I to your community, to your school system. I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Don't be surprised if I come alongside of you and ask you a lot of questions just because I'm new and I'm new to the community. It's not to micromanage you, it's to know you, to get to know your position and what's needed for you to fulfill those positions. Very, very humbled. I'm looking forward to the awesome opportunity working with each and every one of you. Thank you for coming tonight on a Monday night. You probably have more important things to do, like the NFL Monday Night Football game. But thank you for coming out for a hearing. I know this is an important decision. Thank you for being part of that. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you. Thank you.
All right, I'm on deadline.
Okay, there you go. We have 4 children. They're all grown up. Oh, we got one going in the